Good morning. Good morning. My favorite people on the planet. So the first song that we heard today was perfect for today's talk, and I want to go over those lyrics again. I am light, I am light. I am not the things my family did. I am not the voices in my head. I am not the pieces of the brokenness inside. I am light. I am not the mistakes that I have made or any of the things that cause me pain. I am not the pieces of the dream I left behind. I am light. I am not the color of my eyes. I am not the skin on the outside. I am not my age. I am not my race. My soul inside is all light, all light. I am divinity defined. I am the God on the inside. I am a star, a piece of it all. I am light. That's by India Ari. Wonderful singer and songwriter. And it's in alignment with so many conversations I had this week, whether it was in A Course in Miracles, where we talked about political divisions and people's paradigms and our friendship circles. We talked about our families of origin and some of the things we went through with our families, whether it was addiction to drugs and alcohol, the ways we dealt with money, and all the ways those things color our paradigms, the way that we think about the world, the way we view everything and everybody. And the things that we automatically do and are a part of our DNA, whether we're aware of it or not. And we carry these things and we do things subconsciously because they're just within us. They're our habits. They're the things that we heard as children and never questioned. It was just the way our world was. And then if we're aware and awake, we realize that those things are happening to us. That we make decisions based upon something we didn't consciously choose. That we react to things in ways that we may not understand because it comes from some place other than a place that we chose consciously. And we hear so many times, that's just the way I am. That's just what I do. Or the devil made me do it. Or something else other than us. And so many of us blame our families, our parents, our siblings, the world, something that happened to us, trauma as children. You know, we blame that on what's happening now, and it may be all a part of the reason that we do things or think things or see things a particular way. But what we're finding out, and with unity principles, we know that doesn't have to be written in stone. And so we get to choose whether or not we're going to carry it forward from today. Whether we find out when we're 10 years old and decide to do something about it, 20 years old, 30 years old, or for me, 59 years old, and having this awakening, and you say, oh my gosh, that's where that came from. And I tell you what, the realization I had this week rocked my world. Because I didn't know it was there. And it was only in listening to other people's conversations about their families and their issues that all of a sudden mine came to light. And it just brought up great sadness. And I thought, man, I am 59 and just now getting the connection. Finding out that something I heard or got used to in my childhood has been rippling through my life all this time, and I didn't know. So I had a pattern in my life. I had a habit in my life. And I thought, man, this doesn't feel good. I don't want this. But isn't it wonderful to know that we get to choose now how we move forward in life? What we get to step into. So I could be angry at my family, at my parents, and say, they shouldn't have done that to me. And that's just the cross I have to bear. Or I can realize they did the best they could with what they had at the time, and they loved me as much as they could with the way they'd been taught to love. And there we have it. And you get to sit and look at it and say, okay, now what? I can stay in blame, or I could not blame, but I could stay in anger and sadness and just say, well, I had a sad childhood.
Because what they did to you then, you're doing it to yourself now.
That's right. When I decide not to change it, I just do it to myself, and I keep perpetrating the same thing on myself.
You're punishing yourself.
Right. And so I decided with the sadness, after I let it all go, I think, there might be some more.
For now.
For now, yes. For now. There might be something else to let go of later.
One at a time.
One day at a time, yes. 1 hour at a time some days, right?
What you can handle.
Yeah. We do what we can handle when it's there. And I really do believe, and there is some scientific research that says that things come up for us at a time when we're ready to receive it. When you have the strength to hear it, to feel it, and to move with it. So I remember years ago, I experienced sexual trauma as a child and did not remember it until I was in therapy as an adult for sexual trauma. And I was in an environment where someone was taking care of me and guiding me through the experience as an adult, and then I showed up one day and let something out. And my therapist looked at me and she said, "What did you say?" And I said, "Oh my gosh." And then I said, "It happened to me as a child." And then we talked about it. But I was in my 20s, I believe. But then it was safe for it to come out. And then we integrated that into the therapy I was in at the time. And then I worked on it, and I released it. And you're right, Mike, that later on in my 30s and 40s, there are other times when I dealt with that exact same issue on a deeper level when I was ready for it. So it was a decade at a time. But deal with it, I think we must. If we're going to live full lives. You know, we can, when we don't deal with those parts of ourselves that are calling for us to handle them, then I think we contract, or something gets closed off. Some part of us that is yearning to be expressed fully gets shut down when we won't look at our pain. or on something that's happened that we just don't want to look at because it's not pretty, or we don't want to feel it because it's hard, or because it's running deep. And we think the amount of tears we're going to have are going to drown us. Because I know we each have been in that place where it feels like the tears are going to drown us, haven't we? And we don't want to let it go because we think, oh, it's here, it's here. I don't know what to do with it now. And that's when we need each other, or we need therapy, or counseling, or something to help us move through it.
Sometimes I think, Kim, that the reason we don't let go of something is because we're afraid to go there.
Yes.
We're afraid to feel, in order for you to let go, you have to feel and see, or see and feel first.
Right.
And then you can let go. And that's what keeps some of us from letting go, because we don't want to go there.
Yeah,
We're scared to go. We don't want to experience the pain again.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not going to go away until we do.
Yes.
Because it never happened.
Mm-hmm.
And, but I find myself, that, okay, let go. Before I even see it or feel it, I don't want to see it. I don't want to see it. I don't want to face it.
Yeah, I've been there too.
Yes, yeah, it's the fear. The fear of that keeps you from, oh, okay, so I feel it, I see it, now I'm letting go.
Because it takes you back to the experience.
Yes, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, and you're in that experience again,
Yes.
and the fullness of it, if you're willing to look at it
Uh-huh.
fully. And so I think it takes a willingness always to be open to whatever Spirit brings us, or our souls are calling us to do. And maybe it's part of our work here on this planet to always try to be fearless about looking at what's inside and being willing to feel it. And it takes a lot to be open, because you never know what's going to show up, and you don't know what it's going to look like until you see it, and you don't know the depth of the pain until you dive into it. And you think you've hit the bottom, and then something else happens. Because I know when I was in my 30s and 40s, in fact, when we moved here, we relocated from the Washington, D.C. area to here, those issues came back up for me again. And I didn't realize why I felt so unsettled after we got settled in physically, opened all the boxes, unpacked everything, furniture all situated, and then life got quiet after being here about a month. And then all of my emotion rose up. And I went to counseling because I didn't know what was happening. And it was the counselor who told me that sometimes when you have a major shift in life, it unsettles things that you've dealt with before, and wants you to deal with it, whatever you've dealt with before, on a different level. And it shakes up what you thought you had handled. And so she said, this is normal. I thought, oh, okay. I don't know if that's good news or not. But somehow that's how the psyche works. And so I get reminded that, you know, that adage that we're never given more than we can handle at any given time. And I think we all have been in that place where you think, I didn't know you thought that much of me, and I wish maybe you didn't. Because we don't want to do it. We don't want to walk in there. We're not ready for the work. So Myrtle Fillmore, one of her books is How to Let God Help You. It says the solution of your every problem lies with you and the Father. Others cannot tell you what to do. Others cannot keep you from doing that which is best. As you consecrate yourself to God and seek earnestly and persistently and patiently to do His good will, you will find that real peace, strength, freedom, and wisdom are yours. The mind of God, active in your consciousness, is your present help. If you turn to God and turn away from human reasoning, longing, and fears, He will show you the way that leads to the fullness of your good. The real important thing, you know, is to lift your consciousness above the things of the material world, above personality and human limitations, and unfold your Christ consciousness. Instead of letting the mind dwell on people and seeing them as personalities, the follower of Jesus Christ should keep his attention upon universal truth and gradually lift all of his thinking to the truth standard. Thinking habitually about people, their actions, their human limitations tends to bind one to personal consciousness. To do the great works that Jesus promised his followers would do, one must raise his consciousness to a place where he is able to see the perfect image and likeness of God in all people. One must not let himself be influenced by the likes and dislikes of the human nature. Christ is the real self of each individual. By seeing only the Christ in all people, we not only strengthen our own spiritual consciousness, but help all whom we contact to realize and express their innate divinity. So we're back again to Christ consciousness. The lyrics of the song: I'm not the brokenness, I am the light. Raising our vibration. We talked about that in our Rewriting Your Story workshop yesterday. And a lot of us talked about how do we raise our consciousness, switch our vibration to a higher vibration so that we can step fully into who we're called to be and not express the brokenness that we feel sometimes. To move away from the paradigm and create a new one. Rewrite the story again. Shed the old skin. The Buddha said, just as a snake sheds his skin, we must shed our past again and again. Because you get stronger and then something else rises for us to deal with. You get stronger again, something else rises for us to heal. But it's in our Christ consciousness that we get to grapple with that and heal it completely and know that what happened to us is not us. The pain is not us. There is no brokenness. In my situation, my paradigm of always thinking there's another shoe that's going to drop, there are no shoes. That's right. There's nothing that's going to drop unless you think there is, unless you believe there is. But we get to choose our Christ consciousness, choose to embrace it. It's within us, but we can choose not to embrace it. We can choose not to see it. We can choose the brokenness if that's what we want. Because sometimes it's easier to stay in the brokenness because that's what we're used to. And it's rote. We don't have to think about feeling it because we've had it all these years. And it's our reaction, our common reaction to the world. So we have to break the cycle. We have to rework our consciousness. We have to raise our vibration, even when we don't feel like it. But if your vibration is already raised, the brokenness would not be on our radar screen. So the challenge in life is to stay in high vibration, to stay in Christ consciousness, to use our denials and affirmations. I am not my DNA. I can choose my DNA. I can choose my paradigm of the world. There are no shoes to drop. I have healthy knees, unlike the knees of my father. Not the sins of the father, the knees of the father. I choose not to have the same medical history my mother had. I choose something different, but then that means I get to work on that in my consciousness. And work hard, I must. Right, Gilda? Work hard, I must. Because I'm used to the other. I'm used to all those years I said, I'm following in my mother's footsteps in a lot of ways. And so I have to renounce that statement and devise something different. So the beautiful thing is we get to choose our lives. We get to choose that we are whole, perfect, and complete, no matter how many decades we have felt otherwise. And I believe we have up until we take our last breath to choose new consciousness. Doesn't matter if you get it at 20 or 25 or 85. It doesn't matter. Long as you get it. Because you can still have life full and joyful and peaceful. Happiness all the time. That's my new affirmation. Happiness all the time. What a concept. Right? What a concept. Yeah. How do we wrap our heads around that? Because the world tells us that's not natural. That's not life. But we get to say it is. And I believe that even when things happen, when the song won't download, no matter how many times I want it to download, that life is still wonderful. And I'm still happy and joyful, and I can sing something else, or not sing at all. We get to choose. I hope you will all choose happiness and peace and joy all the time. Because that's my prayer for you. So let's take this in a meditation.